Welcome back to the No Name Real Estate Podcast. So today, Jay Dow, me and JoJo were driving yesterday, and he had his record GCI month, over $200,000 in GCI. Crazy amount. But you know what he told me? The first thing that came out of his mouth? I'm kind of
What's that?
scared about what's going to happen with this NAR settlement. Like, he's having record growth, and some agents are, and then all of a sudden, like, the fear came in that he might lose that, or it might slip because of these awkward conversations we have to have with buyers now, with buyer consults, and then now with sellers like not paying. So today I want to like just kind of hit you with more objections on when a buyer approaches you, that conversation. For me, the most awkward thing in the world. Now I like you got I like you're gonna have to pay me, maybe.
Yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
want to handle objections with sellers who say, I ain't paying anybody nothing. Like, I'll pay you, but that, right? So, like, I think the two hardest objections that we're going to see in real estate. Um, and then I've got actually a few more things because some things have now started changing. I didn't even tell you this. It's a complete surprise of what the builders are doing to us here in Houston.
Mhm.
And what some of these showing platforms like Showami are starting to do. So there's a lot of change happening in the real estate industry, but I think
Mhm.
right out of the gate, let's just start with the objections, and then we'll work
Well,
down kind of that crazy list today.
be
But
before we start that real quick, the one thing I
yeah,
wanted to say is like when you just talked about like him having these fears and this and that, like it's completely normal because
yeah,
you know, I was thinking about this yesterday because like I've been like I've just been saving like crazy and I'm like, I don't know what's gonna really happen. And if the worst case scenario happens, like okay, let's just say I like couldn't sell real estate tomorrow. I'm like, what would I do? Like there's other options out there. So it's like I have no control over this.
hmm
And if I or have I done anything to try to control this? And the answer is like not really. Like we do this podcast and talk about it, but I haven't been, you know, actively like sitting at the, you know, sending letters to the congressman or legislature or anything like that.
yeah,
Um so it's just interesting that someone's like, oh, I'm having a record month, and then they're just like willing to like let the chips fall how they may. But I will guarantee you is if you ask those people that are like, oh, I'm having a record month, or I had a record month last month and now I'm scared about next month, it's like, well, what are you doing to make sure that you put yourself in the position to have another record month when this does happen?
yeah.
Are you like hiring a professional negotiations coach to have conversations about how to have these conversations with your clients? Are you going to communications? Are you taking a communications class?
Mhm.
Like there's so many things out there. And it's like, I think real estate agents are very good at like getting their license and then following suit of what every other agent does. This is why it's such a low barrier to entry. But when like the tides turn, it's very unique to see someone at the forefront, like actually charging ahead. And this is like why the cream really starts to separate at the top, because the people that are being proactive are the ones that are going to have the most success. And it's the same thing that when you go through any market shift, whether it's like the market crash in '08, whether it's the COVID era, the list goes on. But the people that put their head down and just charge forward are the ones that come out on top. And then in 5 years, they're reaping the rewards from all those, listings that they're getting from their buyers that they were working with during this era.
Yeah.
So all of this fear is a big distraction. And, maybe you spend 1 hour a day scrolling on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, which I guarantee you it's more than that for most people and most agents that are listening. And what they should be doing is sharpening their skills and preparing. So if you can replace that, activity of wastefulness with an activity of, productivity, it's just like lead generating. Your business will automatically shift.
Yeah. And so JoJo and I were talking yesterday, and I was like, because and a lot of times when I talk to you or real estate agents or Joe, it always comes from that perspective of kind of like the public should know this stuff. They should know that about the commissions, if they have to pay them, if they don't. And the other aspect of this is like, Joe just came from like like it's going to be what he's basically said was like, these conversations are going to be hard. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. And what has my stance been with you, Jesse, since forever is just like, I kind of get up, like, not upset, but annoyed of like the pound your chest realtor who just welcomes just absolute, atrocities to the real estate market. And I'm going to double down my business. I'm like, I think faced with an actual fear or reality, they're going to struggle too. I think what you said is being quiet, being proactive, and sharpening the skills is big. So I want you to, hopefully we kind of go through some of these objections today of what
Well,
people
I'll go through all of
say.
them.
But
But here's the thing. The I just totally lost my train of thought of what I was going to
well,
say. What
and
were you?
let me finish real quick because I told Joe, I said two things
Oh,
that
I
I
know what I was
think
going
of
to say.
this, Joe, because it's great. Okay, let's just say the NAR settlement happens, and I'm just literally throwing out a day, but in 10 days, and in 10 days now, every buyer out there, every client knows exactly what's going to happen, and every agent knows what's going to happen. Then that's a great situation. But I told Joe, I'm like, the public doesn't know shit. They don't, and 90% of the public isn't even going to be ready to buy in the next 10 days. They may be ready in a year or two. So they don't even really care about that information until it's like present to them. So
Yeah.
the one thing I fear, Jojo, is not the top agents, the middle agents, or even the new agents. I told him, like, it's the shitheads. It's the ones backdooring everybody and doing all this like sneaky free stuff. And I was like, that's where consumers and public may start losing trust, and start hearing this person does it for cheap or free.
Well, it's the thing that blew my mind is they released that study a couple weeks ago that said that 70% of buyers had no clue how their agent got paid or who or how much their agent made on the buy
Exactly.
side. And this is the problem. Like when you work with buyers, when you're like the commission is displayed and you're getting paid a specific amount when you close the deal, no matter what happens, I don't feel that agents have a duty or even a desire to talk about the financial situation to their buyers because buyers are just they're like they're in their mind they're just like, oh, I don't have to pay for this agent because they heard it somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's very interesting that 70% of buyers had no clue how much their agent made or how they even got paid. And
Yep.
then also the same study said that like 25% of agents didn't even know that there was an NAR settlement going on and that the commission structure was going to change. So I actually, when and
That's shocking.
I think it's just, I know it is shocking, but I think it goes down to like how your own previous experiences were. So I still remember buying my first house and then my agent told me, uh, her name was Donna Taylor. She told me, she goes, just so you know, she goes, I get paid by the listing agent. They share their commissions with me and it's displayed on all these documents that I see on my side. And I don't know why she was telling me this because this wasn't public information back then because she was giving me the fulls from the MLS. And then she's like, it's right here. So she would always like say, oh, it's right here. Like when she was basically like for our buyers consultation. I still remember we met at Barnes and Noble in Clackamas Town Center. And so she was so then every time we went out, I was always looking at that number and I was always like, oh, cool, this one's at 3%. That like she's gonna make more money. And she told me how they got paid and all the things. Like I was like, oh, that's really cool that, that's not a cost that I have to pay. But then she even told me, is like when you sell your house, you're gonna pay a listing commission and they're gonna share that with me. So she just did a really good job at explaining it. So then when I became a real estate agent, I took that experience and I just thought it made me feel really good. So like I was just always upfront with my buyers from the very beginning and just said, do you know how I get paid? And do you want to, well, now they displayed on the websites in the MLS. So it's really easy to figure it out. But,
I
I'm getting a lot of agents calling saying like, oh, this agent's listing this house, and they're only paying a 1% BAC. I'm going to call that agent and ask if they're really set on 1% and this and that. I'm like, who cares? Like, who freaking cares? If your client loves the house, write the offer and negotiate the commissions. Like, this
You
is the
can
way
do
world
that?
100%, dude.
Wait. So isn't the listing agreement has a certain commission on there?
Yeah. But you can still ask the seller to pay more. It's
Oh,
like
you
asking for
can?
closing
What
cost.
what
Yeah.
what do you feel that okay, do you think is that gonna happen more? And a
Yeah.
seller's
We have
gonna be like, F you.
no, that's not true. When we
You don't
sell
think?
houses and the sellers, no, no, no. When we sell our houses, and we've even had it, I've had it happen to me before where the seller's like, I'm only going to pay the buyer's agent 2% or 1.5, whatever. And then up here comes one offer and it says right on there, seller to pay the buyer's agent commission of 2.5. So it's like a 0.5% difference, 500,000, that's 2,500 bucks. So the seller's like basically like, well, I'm going to either give him a $2,500 to the agent or $2,500 off the house. And the agent's like telling the buyer, okay, either A, you can pay this or the seller's going to pay it. Like, what route do you want to go? When you're buying a $500,000 house, like in your mind, if you're wrapping that into your loan, you're just like, whatever, it's 2,500 bucks. I'll just like my agent. That's what my agent's charging. It's most buyers aren't going to go out there and what you're always referencing, like with what the way buyers think,
Yeah.
those are always like, we only hear the loudest boos or the cheapest seats get the loudest boos, right?
Yeah.
We're only hearing what the most negative people are saying.
Right.
So, and that is a very fractional percentage of what is actually out there. So like when you said people go through cycles, like people only pay attention when they're buying and selling, which it's really true. And that's every 7 to 10 years. This is why I always say like we really have a full cycle before we really see significant, and I'm talking significant change,
Yeah. And
because
it's going to
it's
be
going to be.
rocky to start, and then it's going to
Mhm.
smooth out. Like we're going to figure it out. It's actually what I told Joe yesterday. I was like, to be honest, Joe, I know you're kind of like scared of it right now, but I bet you what's going to happen is you're going to start having some of these consultations, buyer conversations, and on one of them, after some repetition, maybe getting your butt kicked a little bit, you're going to figure out one word, one sentence that like wins them over, and then your confidence is going to be there going throughout. I think that's something that is going to help eventually is just kind of going through it, like going through the weeds, figuring out what these buyers are actually saying, what their objections are, and handling that. So like right out of the gate, let's say you get a buyer right now, especially us with out of state relocation. I do feel like we have the hand up it with YouTube clients because they have to lean on us, right? So
Yep.
what are you going to say to buyers right now? Like how are you going to talk about this?
Well, I think like the biggest mistake most people make is one is they try to justify everything they do.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
like I charge 3% because I'm writing, like they're just repeating the basics of like what they should be doing anyways. But this is like what I talked about listing presentations before. Like this is the scripting that they're just trained on. So if a buyer, first of all, like someone reaches out like, hey, I'm moving to Houston, Texas, and we have a budget of 800,000. We would love to talk to you guys about relocating out to Houston. Okay, fantastic. Like, when are you guys available? I'd love to jump on a Zoom call and see how we can, best help you. So you get on that Zoom call, and it's like first date. Like you guys are filling each other out. Who knows if they're interviewing other agents? Who knows if they've reached out to 5 other people? But in my mind, I'm like, I always feel either A, they're going to like me and they're going to want to work with me, and those are the people I want to work with, or B,
mhm,
they're not going to want to work with me. We're not going to get along, and who care? And I don't really care if they move on to someone else. When you're in a position where you don't need to worry about like people liking you, and it's just like anything else. And people are like, oh, it's easy to say that when that's happening, but we all have the choice of whether or not that happens based on the productivity and the actions that we're taking every single day. And I'm not saying I have so much business that I just don't care about money. That's completely false. But I'm just saying I'd rather just not work with an a-hole than work with one and not like the person I'm working with just because I'm trying to make a buck, right?
right.
So I had a conversation yesterday with a client, with Mason Hill, and he was like telling me, he's like, oh yeah, because we had a showing off the market, and then they haven't contacted us back, and he's all upset, and he's like, well, I was really hoping they would buy this house before your listing contract expires, because we're going to interview other agents, because we've done everything. It's obviously the only thing we haven't done is change agents, so that's what's going to sell the house. And I just said,
Damn.
I said, Jason, when I listed the house, I said, I told you to list this thing at 1.8 million and you started at 2.4. I said, we had the most activity. We had the most legit buyers. And I said, all we've been doing since that day is chasing the market down. You also didn't give me all the information up front, accurate information. And still, as of last week, the information changed again.
Yeah.
So I said, I've been working with my back up against the wall on this deal for the last year. So if you think I said, you think that changing agents is going to change the outcome? I said, I can tell you now, doing this hundreds of times, that the only thing that's going to change the outcome is giving people transparency and giving them the right price. And I showed him all the stats and all the things. And I said, you're either going to get someone of equal skill and talent, or you're just going to go backwards. And I said, based on my experience of this happening just 2 months ago with another listing, it's going to go downhill. And so I
What do you
said,
say? What do you say? Hold on. What do you
he
say?
just he just said, he's just like, yeah, you're right. We've just been, we've been reacting to everything. And but
So
then he always
emotions are
says,
getting heavy with
oh yeah. He's like, well, we're just really sick and tired of this. And I said, well, how is changing an agent going to change people from coming to see the house? I said, I spend an hour with every single buyer before they even come to see the house to make sure that they're even qualified to come see the home. And um and dude, it was just like, yeah, he's very emotional. He's like, well, I'm sick, this and that. And I said, well, this isn't a $400,000 house, dude. This is a 1.8 million, very unique property with a lease and an easement, and it's a terraced lot, like all of these things. And so I had him like mark off the property markers last time. And dude, the property line is like way further off than what he said. And like the driveway, dude, it's crazy. He's gonna have to carve in a new driveway and all these things.
really.
And I just said it makes people feel uneasy when we're telling them one thing. And then because I even said like a month ago, I said, based on what I'm seeing on the public records, I said this land lease or your lot line for your property is running across the corner of your driveway. And like you built your driveway into the leased property. And then he's like, no, 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 no. And then I even sent him pictures. He verified, no, that's not right. That's not right. And then I go out there, dude, and he's like, yeah, you were right. He's like, I was completely off.
Man.
So then, actually, so then I started thinking in my head, when he withdrew the listing, I was actually kind of happy, and I was just like, screw it. And I like went in, and I probably have about 15K into this listing,
Yep.
and I just in my own mind, I'm just like, dude, you know what? I don't even care if they move on to another agent. I literally wanted to email him this morning and just say, you know what? Because I told him that my contract was through Labor Day because he's like, we only have like another month of nice weather because I has a pool, and I almost emailed him and just said, you know what? I have a month on my contract. You can go ahead and find another agent. I don't really care.
Really.
I just, dude, it's not going to sell. I can already tell you.
And the headspace, it's like move on time.
Yeah, it's wasting my
Clear the head.
time. I've literally flown out there 4 times for that house. I've reshot the pictures twice. I've sent massive
I
mailing
want to get
campaigns.
into the luxury market.
Oh yeah, dude.
I'll take the 500 bangers all day, right?
That's
Well,
what I
real
told him.
quick, hey, with that, like, and we're gonna get into the buyer objections. I actually got a list of other stuff too, but this, like, I would because I texted you the other day, the days on market is like it's really rising. I mean, even here in Houston, it's at 4.3 months. Joe said that's the highest since 2012. I was talking to Smoke Dog, you know, our boy George Diggity. He's like trying to buy some investment properties. He said in San Diego, there is massive price reductions. He says on a quarter of the homes right now have taken a price reduction, and some of them up to $200,000. Like that's just
Well,
two
yeah, I
markets.
mean,
But
well, the average price point in San Diego is probably $3 million.
yep.
It's actually like I think the number one most expensive market in the country. But also, like I was
But it's
saying
the
about
first time
the
they've taken reductions apparently in X amount of years.
yeah, I have to look at the stats. The like I was saying though about the inventory levels is like I would love to know if the actual physical inventory is going up or is it just because of the absorption rate going down.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that's all going to shift in the next. I think we're heading backwards, right? We're heading in a good direction because with the election coming up, the Fed has privately announced behind the scenes that they're, with the anticipation of the way the election's going, that they're looking to make a quarter rate cut every month for the next till the end of the year. That would land us in the high fives by the end of 2024. Now with everything going on, now it's changed again. So who knows what the future has in store for us? But yeah, I mean, things are
Does that
changing.
cause a frenzy again? Like, or is it just kind of a normal market in your opinion?
I've had a seller texted me yesterday, or is actually like a week ago, and he said, "Hey, now that they're announcing," and I didn't say anything to him about the rates, and I hate using rates as an excuse. It's just the reality because there's supposedly 80 million buyers on the sidelines just waiting for the rates to come down. And he asked me, he said, "Well, now that the rates are coming down, is the price of my house going to go up, and can we raise the price?" And I said,
Right.
it's a slow burn. I said, first of all, if it's a quarter a month, you know, until like somebody really, if it dropped like the COVID, dude, where it just plummeted really quick, that was a whole different situation. But like even people saying like house prices haven't came down, like where's the crash? It's like, well, it did go down. It was just like a slight decrease
Mm.
month over month for like the last 12 months. You're just not paying, like you're just in the cycle, right? So with rates, and I told the seller, I said the only way that we would see a significant increase would be like a real dramatic cut, and then we would need like, and then it would take about 60 days for the buying pool to react. And so that's why I always tell everyone is like when the market starts to get hot, you have about 60 days to like have good buying power. And even in the Cromford report, it even shows they have indicators built in that shows like what's the best time to buy and the best time to sell because they have an algorithm built out that shows like right when the market starts to take up, that's the best time to buy. When the market starts right on the backside of where the market's starting to drop down, that's the best time to sell. So it's like there's clear indicators that show that.
And where do you feel we're at like right now?
I honestly think that we're going to start to see the tick up with the
Tick up.
rates coming down. Oh yeah, yeah, the market's going to start to pick up
So
with the
that
rates coming down and the election. I mean, let's just say Trump gets in there, dude. We're going to be on a tear for the next 4 years.
okay.
But then if it does become into a hot sellers market, then we're going to run into problems with then the buyers commissions will really get
Okay, dude, that's I
hot and
kept saying
heavy.
K, that's what I wanted to say because in my mind I'm like, well, that's fucking like okay. Right now, I feel like sellers are kind of like, I don't have to pay buyer's agents anymore. And that's just like you said it. That's what people think. Here soon, that's gonna we need to talk about that objection. But if interest rates do dip and now we got all these buyers and there's multiple offers, then sellers are definitely going to be like, I'm not paying anybody in my, that's just what I think.
Yeah, well, like in 2023, they said that 50% of home sellers paid a concession to a buyer. But if you look back to like 2020, they weren't paying closing costs. And guess what happened in 2023? People still bought houses, and that's what I'm saying. People are still going to pay. The thing that I noticed during the COVID era when the rates were at twos and threes, dude, even Grant, this is my favorite saying by Grant Cardone, is people were throwing money around like it was Skittles.
Yeah.
It's like, look at all the capital that was out there. Look at how many investment bankers were out there. People were getting money because it was free, basically.
Yeah.
Dude, people were putting in appraisal gap waivers for $200,000 and they just
Dude.
miraculously had all this money in their bank. That's what I'm saying. Depending on who's running the country is when people are feeling frothy and they have a lot of money.
Yeah.
So this comes back to like the buyer broker agreement and like why like the 10% of people that don't want to pay a buyer's agent commission if they're a buyer, dude, why would you ever want to work with those people? Like I said, you're trying to convince someone to use your services. Let them, like, it's just like selling your house. You can go on and hire Redfin right now and pay a 1% listing fee or 1.5 if you're not in their like premier market or whatever. And there's like all these variables. You can put a for sale by owner up in front of your house and sell it by yourself. But there's going to be a lot of sellers out there that are saying they're not paying buyer's agent compensation. So that you better have an agreement with your buyer. And guess what? Guess who wins in all those scenarios? The people with the money. Guess what that does? It creates a bigger divide in home ownership. And this is exactly like if you listen to the economists and the smart people talk about like what the impact is going to have on the future of home ownership. They sit here and talk about affordable housing in America, and everyone like the idiots are saying that this is going to like drive down the price of homes. They're fools.
Yeah.
What did Ken McElroy tell us, Jackson, when we met with them? He said
And
the
yeah.
biggest gain in asset class during inflationary periods is real estate. So he's like, buy as many houses as you can while interest rates are low.
Yep. And he
So
said in the next 10 years, on
yeah,
average, 50% increase in
yep,
values in homes.
exactly.
And he's like, in
That is
certain markets, it could be a couple 100%.
so people are sitting here saying, you know, sitting here saying, if I was filing a lawsuit against the buyer's agent class right now, what I would be saying is that my buyer's agent conspired with the listing agent to drive the price up because they were going to get paid more. That's the angle I would be taking in this situation.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be saying, oh, my agent said I was doing this for free, that they were doing this for free. Because if you could prove that the buyer's agent, you could easily do that during COVID. I mean, there was 900 offers going on every single house. And I'm not saying that, do I ever, I've never, dude, what drives me crazy is when people are like, oh, they're paying 2.25 versus 2.5. And I break out the math. I'm like, dude, it's literally like a $2,000 on 20K. Who freaking cares? You're
So,
really going to create a problem here.
so a seller comes up, Jesse, I want you to sell my house. Like it's time, but I'm not paying a buyer's agent. I don't care. I don't need to anymore. And I want you to react to that, but also not from the point of like, well, if you don't, because here's what you hear out there everywhere. All right, well, if you don't pay a buyer's commission, nobody's gonna buy your house.
Yeah.
But like
Well,
that, now
it's
you're
always,
competing with them. Now you're arguing with them instead of like finding a solution.
this is what I would say is like, obviously this is like during, if someone literally just calls me up on the phone and makes that statement, that's like one thing. But if we're like in a like listing appointment and the seller's like, I've been watching all over the
Hmm.
news. I was told I don't have to pay, a buyer's agent commission anymore. Um, like I don't want to pay one. So what do we do about that?
Yeah,
Then I would, like we talked about in the last video and you know, um, what do we call that episode?
we either did the Chat GPT one or we did the Zillow one. I can't
No, no,
remember.
no, the one where objection handling.
Oh, objection. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So one is you're always trying to figure out the seller's motivation. So like the question that you should be asking is like, why are you like, one is like, why are you selling your house? But two, what is most important to you? Is it the sales price? Is it the net or is it agent commission? So like if anyone says anything besides net profit in my pocket, I've talked to sellers where like my neighbor sold for 400 and I need to sell for 401. Like they got this big giant ego, right? Okay, cool. We can talk about how to make that happen, whatever. But most people, 90%, 99% of them are going to just be like the net profit, right?
Right.
Well, if you read any book in history about building businesses or any Warren Buffett books or any of those, the one thing that they always talk about of like how they were able to become so successful was creating the right incentives for their people. Now, when you're talking about sales, and this is like where things kind of start to become very intertwined, because I always say that real estate isn't really so much sales, it's more relationship, right? So I've never in my life ever convinced a buyer to buy a house or a seller to sell their house. That has just never happened. A buyer either loves the house and they're going to move forward, and then we have to like go to work on getting our offer accepted, and then there is sales on selling, and that's a whole different situation. So if a seller's like, well, I want to net the most money. Okay, cool. Now you're gonna have to find a balance of incentives, marketing, negotiations, and all those things.
Hmm.
So Jackson, you just told me that you don't want to pay a buyer's agent commission. That's great. But your whole objective is to get the most profit or net for your property. The one thing I know is that 99% of these buyers out there are working with buyer's agents, the most qualified ones. And the realistic situation is you could have never offered a buyer's agent compensation since the history of selling real estate. You also don't even have to pay me. You can put a for sale by owner sign up in front of your house. So what makes you want to work with me? Well, they start saying all the things that they're going to get, right? Okay, cool. So now you're saying those are all the things you're going to get with me. Now there's all these buyers out there working with buyer's agents that are getting all those things on the buy side that you feel are very valuable. Now, a buyer is got an agreement with their buyer's agent. It's going to say they're going to pay X percentage. Now, let's say those buyers can't afford to pay those concessions.
Hmm.
Those buyers agents know that they can't afford to pay those concessions. So anyone that's not offering a concession on the listing side is not going to bring those buyers to your property. Now I'm going to tell you why this is an important thing for you to know, is because if your house is a hot home and you're going to get multiple offers, we need every single buyer in the world to come in and put an offer, whether they're an FHA buyer, VA buyer, concession buyer, cash buyer, doesn't matter. You can leverage all of these offers to bring up the best offer. And once we get multiple offers, we can now evaluate all the offers and how we're going to move forward. And I can tell you right now that when it's multiple offers on the table, the ones that rise to the top are the ones that are eliminate buyer's agent compensation. They're eliminate, closing costs. They're waiving inspections. They're making it very easy on the seller. However, if you start eliminating their incentives out of the gate, we're going to end up with maybe one, maybe none, maybe five offers.
Yeah.
But if we can put our best foot forward, it gives us our best opportunity to get you your desired outcome, which is the highest net. Dude, most sellers like start to really understand what that is all about. And if it's a one-off home in the middle of nowhere that is going to get, one offer if you're lucky, that's the guy that I'm really most worried about, because they're going to get one offer and it's going to be buyer's agent compensation to be 20%.
Dang. Yeah, and then that's the one you're stuck with.
Yeah, because buyer's agents can work backwards, but they can't work up. So if
Hmm.
you set it high, you can always come down, but you can't start low and go up. That's the rule.
Yeah. What do you think, like, just when this thing settles, like here in the next month or whatever, what do you truly feel is going to happen? You think it's going to be like so polarizing one way or the other, or just kind of middle of the road? I think we're going to figure it out. Have these good conversations, and it's going to be data too. Like once you start doing more buyer consults, seller presentations, and you've gone through it a couple times, you may have some data to throw at this. Like, hey,
If
that's
uh
great, seller, but
if
the
he
last few transactions I've done, this has happened.
if Elon Musk was running the MLS or NAR,
Love
he would
that.
just shut the whole thing down and say, "This is what we're doing." Unfortunately, everything is Frankenstein, dude. It's all just this big giant, like this monster they've created over the last 20, 30 years. You cannot move the 800-pound gorilla in a quick fashion. It just doesn't happen. I've worked now with enough corporate companies that are so ingrained in what they're doing and they've been doing things so long. It takes so long to turn that Titanic. So when what we'll see happen is we'll see these like one-off things popping up all over the place, and you'll hear of all of these things, and then the agents will let that be the narrative of like, oh
Hmm.
yeah, this one company's doing this. It's the same thing with Homey. It's the same thing with Open Door. It's the same thing with Zillow offers, dude. All of these things came up, popped up overnight, and boom, they're gone.
Yeah.
The internet was going to disrupt the real estate industry. Boom, it came up, and now it's embraced by the industry, and people love the internet and technology.
Right.
Buyer, Redfin came out and said that they were going to destroy the agents' compensation. Boom, they tried that for a couple months. It didn't work. And now they're embracing the real estate agents. Real estate professionals are the ones that do it right, dude, are very good. And they do offer a lot to their clientele. And I'm a licensed agent in 3 states. I think I do a pretty good job.
Yeah.
I've never once attempted to sell my house by myself in another state. I just can't do it. And now I've been trying to rent a house on my own. And I'm like, dude, this is the worst thing in the world. Like I would never, like, I don't wish this upon anyone.
Right. And that might be what it takes is a few buyers and sellers to try and go through it themselves and realize this sucks.
Oh, if any point in time a buyer comes to me and says like, oh, now you can, dude, I just cannot wait to bury these people.
You want to shove it in a buyer's face.
Dude, I feel like I'm on the hunting blind, dude, and I'm just waiting for that freaking trophy to come across the freaking the
Whack.
breezeway. Boom.
Yeah, it is funny. And I mean, so you think right out of the gate too, like in starting now is like those negotiation classes just gets you prepared mentally and verbally to have these conversations.
Well, you nailed it. You said that like, so many reputations are going to get you to like where you're comfortable. And that's the whole thing. It's having the conversation. So if you're an agent listening to this, call another agent, say, hey, let's pretend you're the buyer and I'm the agent and we're meeting for the first time.
Yeah.
Bring out your contract, read the contracts. Like all the states, I mean, we're close to August 1st. Everyone should have their new buyer broker agreements out, or their new state documents, forms. I've now seen forms being submitted on listings that are talking about concessions. And the agents are including the BACs on those, but it's still not mandatory that they turn them in. It's just, they're just practicing. So we didn't even talk about like how to talk to the buyers about the whole new situation, which is going to be really important.
Maybe we
I
do
think
that
it's,
in the next podcast because I got like three more questions for you.
okay. We can talk about that next one, but as like anyone that's not already doing buyer's agent consultations or anyone that just gets in the car, if a buyer calls you up and just says, oh, hey, I just saw this house at the market, can you go and show it to me? Okay. And then an agent jumps and does it. It's like a Pop-Tart agent. What would be the purpose of doing that if your buyer wasn't serious? Like, you don't even know if they're really ready to, like a lot of agents are like, well, I just want to build a relationship and, earn their business. Okay. Well, what if that guy is like looking to build a house and they're just trying to look at comps? Like just to know if like what their house is worth and what they want to do. Like I've heard
Yep.
of that happening multiple times. What happens if they're just in town and they're bored? Like, dude, if a buyer is serious, they'll be more than happy to follow your lead. And also controlling the narrative is what you want anyways. You don't want a buyer controlling you.
Do you flip that
It's
on
not,
them and go, all right, perfect. I'd love to. But before we do anything legally now, with all the changes, I need you to sign this buyer broker agreement.
oh, well, like, oh, no, no, no. Like if somebody was like calling me up and saying, hey, I want to see this house, I would say that's okay. We can set that up. But before we do that, we need to meet on Zoom for 10 minutes, have a conversation. All the laws have changed. I need to talk to you about representation. I need to make sure you understand your rights, or we can do it in person before we see the property. If they're
Hmm.
like, no, 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 I just want to see the house, all the things, this and that, I'd say, okay, well, I do have a one-time showing age or one-time buyer broker agreement I need to send over to you. And here's the situation. Before, the listing agent shared his compensation with me. Today, I need to have an agreement with you before I show you this property that says how I'm going to get paid. Now, the one thing I can tell you right now is I'm looking at this listing and it says that on here that they're paying 3%. The seller, if you buy this house, the listing agent is going to share 3% of his commission with me.
Hmm.
That's not going to cost you a dime in compensation. So I'm going to make sure that you understand that. You have to know that. So I'm going to fill this out. I'm going to send it over to you. This is for a one-time showing. And there's no obligation beyond this. If you decide you want to see more houses, we're going to have to go into a long-term relationship. And then there's another agreement for that.
Hopefully, that's not where people make them sign that, and now they're hooked on that agent. But
No, it says in there, it says in the contracts too, is have you signed this with anyone else?
okay,
Because remember you were saying your buddy signed that contract or had
yep,
to pay out that compensation because they signed a contract. It
yep,
says in the contract, and most of them now that I'm reading, that says, have you signed this with anyone else?
yep.
I guarantee you, dude, people are going to be signing these things with multiple agents.
And off subject topic, but we were like, a while back, because Joe told me, he's like, it's crazy how many people will call us after they already go to the builder to, you know, oh, I wanted to use you guys, but I just didn't want to spend any more money. And Joe's like, dude, the builder's pissed, right? And so for real estate agents, everybody's always like, oh, they're idiots. How do they not know that? But I mean, like, I get it. Like, they just go straight there. They think they get a better deal. But I'm not going to say the YouTube channel name, and it's not a living in. It's nobody that really isn't ours, but it's a top like real estate home show YouTube channel. And I remember a while back looking at it. So I just brought it up again to read it. Again, I won't share who it is, but I want to see if this is a way you can word it or if this is wrong, right? It says, our services are completely free as a buyer's agent. We get compensated by builders and sellers. Once you fill out our inquiry form, we will be reaching out to you via text message. We look forward to serving you.
Illegal.
That's the biggest YouTube channel. One of them, subscriber base, anyways. I don't, no production,
That's
but
that's what the buyer's agent Batten 2 is all about, is buyer's agent saying that their services are free. So now if you say your services are free, that website right there, every single buyer's agent that person goes, buyer that person works out, because you can only work backwards, you can't work up. Legally, that agent now has, if they keep that website up after August 17th, cannot charge a buyer's agent commission to anyone.
wow, someone needs to let them know.
I just say let them burn.
Yeah, that's crazy, dude. I'll text it to you so you know who it is, but
I'm guessing I know who it is, but
I had one question written down, too, but one of them, YouTube world, we have a lot of past clients 3 months, 6 months ago that maybe we already had conversations about. Oh yeah, the sellers pay our commissions or whatever. But let's say that person now comes out in 3 months, this whole thing's gone. You got to have that conversation with them now. Hey, things have changed. What about past clients?
what about them?
Well, like having that conversation with them. What if you had a buyer consultation with them 6 months ago, 3 months ago from Zoom, and they're like, "Well, I want to use you, but I want to go buy this new construction home, but I don't want to pay you and pay the builder." And
So like
three
you're
months
saying,
ago, you're like, no, no, no. Look, the builder, it's in his marketing budget. That's where you just think, past clients who you've been
I just
working with are gonna think that they already have this. Like, am I grandfathered in?
I just laugh when people call it the marketing budget. The okay. So you're saying that they were going to go buy another house. I thought you were saying like they're going to now list the house that they bought. Oh, if they're like saying like,
Yeah,
oh, I
like
want to go buy.
YouTube, they call, but they're not buying for 6 months. So maybe you already talked to them 3, 6 months
Yeah,
ago, but they haven't bought yet. But
I
now
just
times
say,
have changed.
yeah, I just say, look, you and I have an agreement. You and I need to have an agreement now of how I'm compensated. Most of the time I'm able to get the seller to pay the concessions of which is my commission. And in the event the seller is like absolutely standing firm, not paying the concessions,
Yep.
there's different ways that we can make that happen. Either A, you can bring cash out of pocket, B, tie that into your loan. But what I'm seeing in the market is most of the time is the seller is willing to, pay compensation for the most part.
Yep.
And with new construction, they're typically offering, I just got, a text message right now from a builder saying that they're offering $40,000 in concessions that the buyer can use in any capacity, whether it's closing cost buy down, commission improvements, washer, dryer, fridge, blinds, all the things. And then they
Yep.
actually had a little thing that said, this is how much the washer and dryer value is. Here's how much they're like, all the things. So it's kind of like choose your own adventure. This is what I was saying in 2023, 50% of the homes out there that were sold included concessions. Like it's not an unknown thing. That's why it's just like closing costs. And I was saying this earlier, when the market's hot, the concessions start to drop off. And buyers, they have more money and they're paying more things out of pocket. So anyone to say like this is unheard of, this is never going to happen, they're nuts. I don't know. We sold 200 homes in 2021. I guarantee you 90% of those houses that we worked with the buyers had an appraisal gap waiver, and they were probably anywhere from 30 to $200,000. So now you're
Yep.
telling me if these same people can't afford to pay $15,000 on a $500,000 household? BS.
Yep. Joe told me yesterday, also that one of the builder he put another deal into contract, one of the big nice builders actually, and got the agreement from him, and it was not 3% anymore. It was 2.5%. And it does not say a commission, it says a referral fee. And Joe wasn't too happy about that. So now he's seen some builders slash commissions and call it a referral fee instead of a commission.
Yeah, well, what's happening is these people are just trying to figure out how to pay people. This is what I was saying at the beginning of all this. The sellers are not stupid. The smart sellers are really not stupid. And the incentives are with these buyers working with buyers agents. So I was telling you before, I've never once looked at a commission and said, "Oh, I'm going to go show my buyer this house," or not show the buyer this house because of this compensation is too low or whatever. Have I ever seen an incentive where they're like, "We're going to pay 10% commission, if you close by this date"? And in my mind, I'm thinking like, who do I have a buyer for this house?
We just
Like,
got one of those. We did one.
yeah. So in my mind, I'm like, if I see one of those, I'm definitely digging into my memory bank to see if I have a buyer for that because that would be great. Like, because it's an incentive, you know, there's different things that move the needle. And this is like the same thing I was explaining to Mason Hill. I'm like, I said, Jason, what you're trying to do is you're trying to look at your house as like something that's a consistent product. Like, he's in an industry that they sell products. And I said, you're trying to adjust it to consistently sell more of this product. The difference between like a commodity or like something that people need on a daily basis is this is a real estate transaction. This is a one-time deal. It's not going to be like we're going to sell this house and sell it again tomorrow and the next day and the next day, the next day. We have one time to make this thing happen.
Yeah.
So, you know, I and who really cares if they call it a referral fee? Who cares? Like that's what
Right.
I'm saying. Like who cares how they want to pay it out?
Um, Sometimes he uses like show on me, it's such a big city, but that's also a way that you can pay to have somebody go open doors, right? So you get a client town, go show doors. It's been something advantageous, but they called them the other day. They're actually talking about now how you can charge the client through show on me too. Did you like I don't know. It was he was kind of piling all this stuff on me in one day, so it's a lot to talk about, but it all kind of had that direct message of like, all right, well, the clients may have to pay. Now we're going to start charging the clients, and I mean, for a showing assistant company online to now have an option where, all right, we'll do that. Not only am I not going to show you the property, but I'm going to charge you for it.
When Jordan Peterson and Elon Musk interview came out yesterday,
Ooh, I
and
got to hear that one.
Jordan Peterson was talking to Elon Musk about artificial intelligence. Elon Musk said he said one thing that just I loved it. He goes, in life, you can either choose to be a spectator or a participant.
Yeah,
He's like, we chose to be a participant in this space. And he said that, the new Grok 2 on the chat or on his AI software is going to be as powerful as Chat GPT 4. And he said the third rendition is going to be beyond all of it. And he said he's having to catch up. But anyways, this is what I'm saying. There's a lot of people trying to participate in this space right now that have data, right? Dude, this reminds me of Rex Realty, dude. The guy that opened Rex, who tried
what
to,
was that?
oh gosh, the real estate exchange. The guy's the biggest sleazeball on the planet. He like graduated from Harvard Law and then he opened up the brokerage and then he just started suing everybody. And I still,
Uh,
if I was
Lovely.
buyers and I was filing a class action lawsuit, he filed bankruptcy, I think to protect himself against the lawsuits because he kept telling buyers. I remember I went on this listing appointment and the lady's like, we're going to use Rex. And I remember it was down in the Richmond neighborhood off Division. And I remember she's like, we're going to use Rex Realty because they have a private database of like 100,000 buyers and we don't have to pay real estate commissions. And I'm like, that's really what they told you? I'm like, I can already tell you that 99.9% of the actual buyers are out there. Like this guy has probably a database of investors that are going to lowball the hell out of you. And I remember they listed it with Rex. And I remember like after like, it was probably like 3-4 months, they ended up selling the house for $100,000 below what I said I would sell it for. And it was crazy. But
Ugh.
anyways,
Rex
that's what
Kwando.
I'm exactly. So that's what I'm saying is like you're gonna see all these little weird things pop up and people just trying to like get an edge on the market and trying to solidify themselves because no one really knows. I think it's like I always think to myself, if this was already possible, it'd be happening on the listing side because the listing side has been like this since day one and it just
Hmm.
isn't the case.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
exactly. A lot of noise out there. That's why I like asking you and getting your perspective. Sometimes you just don't know. The other, when you talk about a company that isn't small, I saw the other KW post the other day that they did like 2 billion in profit share.
oh yeah, they
Good signs,
on
bad
their growth
signs.
well in their growth their live growth call, they announced that they paid out their 2 billionth dollar in profit share. And then I was laughing because then I started seeing the red mania on social media saying, profit share over rev share and multi-level marketing. And I was like chuckling to that because, I used to work at I was at KW, and I still remember I talk about this story all the time is, when I came on board there, they had a really good onboarding process. But I remember the ladies like, we really help you establish long-term a long-term plan here through retirement with our profit sharing program. And so I'd already been with a company that did profit sharing, and I still remember the first year they paid us like $1,100. The next year it was 700. Then it was zero. Then it was zero. Then it was zero. Then it was like $200. And it was just like it was great because they always place these programs when things are great, and it's to get buy-in on the company, all the things. I always say like their companies launch profit sharing programs to get ready to sell. That's typically the strategy that I see. But anyways, in our office, it said in October when I was getting ready to leave, it said on the wall, and they tried to use it like, oh yeah, you're not going to get profit share where you're going. And I remember looking at that thing and it said it was like year to date payout was like 30K in profit share for the whole office. And I remember laughing at the gal when I told her, because she's like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna be walking away from profit share and this and that." And I'm like, "I don't have anyone in my profit sharing tree." And I said, "And you guys paid out $30,000 year to date." I'm like, "I just got $30,000 in commission on one deal. Like you guys are insane." So I, when anyone says like profits over revenue share in MLM, but I'm like in revenue share model, it's like a guaranteed payout. And profit share, it's only when the company's profitable. And the last time I checked at Keller Williams when I was there was a franchise fee, and the franchise fee, that means Gary gets paid every single month, no matter what. And here's the thing. I'm not here to knock on any brokerage. I think there's value in every single brokerage. I always say you have to look for that value exchange. But if you're slowly going to sit here and say, oh yeah, $2 billion is life changing and this and that. And they even posted that 150 agents out of like their 180,000 had made over $1 million in profit share. So I went through and looked at our revenue share that you and I have made over the last, since 2020 that we've been there, and we've done 1.2 million in revenue share. So, and EXP in 2022, they paid out $240 million. And in 2023, they paid out $230 million. So I'm like, in 2 years, they paid out nearly 500 million, which is 25% of 2 billion in 2 freaking years, dude. So when
hmm
people are like, what's the difference? Well, there's a big, massive difference. And I'm like, revenue share is life changing, and the other thing I don't really like is, you know, Keller Williams announced, a couple months ago, because when you came on board there, they said whether you're at Keller Williams or not, this money is always going to be paid out to you, the profit share, which EXP does have the same thing, not in the exponential share, but the expansion share. It's guaranteed payout. But Keller Williams said it whether you were there or not. So then there's a lot of people that are still getting profit share at Keller Williams that had left to other companies. Well, then their leadership roundtable said that they voted to abolish that rule. Well, then all the people that were at Keller Williams before that now are not there, filed a class action lawsuit, and they instantly dropped that whole situation. So it's like, how can you sit here and sell people on this premise of this is who I am, this is what I'm going to do, whether you're here or not? And then what these agents would say is like, well, you're not loyal, you didn't stay here. It's like, well, then you shouldn't have written that into the program.
hmm
you know everything's great up front. It's like, signing that prenup, but then when crap hits the fan, are we going to we have to put our checks and balances into play. So I don't know, I always question the integrity and the ideas behind those, and see where the rubber meets the road.
To me, I
But
hate those arguments because it takes away from everything. Like at the end of the day,
oh
there's so
yeah,
many awesome agents that just want to grow their real estate business and
oh
transactions,
yeah,
and then it like the rev share, the profit share just muddies it because that's the head-to-head competition
yep.
is that talk. And then it's, when you look at like what all the brokerages me and you are at, it's like, and me again stepping at like not being a top, like doing the real estate, it was who am I around? And I can remember vividly like at these other companies around the lower producing people. And then it was the shift over to the big producing when like 10x, 20x, 50x. And then we've brought on people that like, okay, dude, here's the systems, here's exactly what you do. And now they're doing stages. They're doing 4 million in gross commissions. Joe Rodriguez, our partner here, he said he literally 10x'd in 1 year, went from 50,000 commissions for 17 years, never more than 50 to 500,000. And that's the part about it is like the people, it's the collab. And you don't get that in a traditional brick and mortar because they're holding their secrets so near and dear. And that profit share and the rev share just ruins all of that.
Well, if you are an agent and you're like, oh, I'm thinking about making a change, or I'm looking at options, The thing that's baffling to me is I'll hear agents say like, I've never sold so much real estate, or I've had these records and all these things. And they're like, but I'm exploring my options. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, why are you exploring your options? Like, talk to me about that. Like, personally, dude, I could care less. Like, if someone leaves, like, do I enjoy the revenue share? Do I enjoy people in the organization? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, it's always about the person doing what's best for themselves. But it's because they're being convinced by someone else that just doesn't understand the different models, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyone that like if you talk to a recruiter that's only been at Keller Williams their whole life, they think Keller Williams is the greatest model on the planet. They drink the Kool-Aid, all the things. And I saw this in corporate America time and time again,
Right.
especially with companies that were heavy into recruiting. Well, then you're selling the idea. So then the agent leaves and they go into this model, and then they're like, crap, I just made a big mistake because they didn't do enough due diligence. And it's very rare that a brokerage will show you all their back end systems, and that's the one thing that really I admired about EXP when we made the move is like they were like, we're going to show you everything, and whether or not you decide to make the move over here is up to you. Like, we don't like, we would love to have you, we don't need you, basically. Like, enjoy our platforms, let it grow your business, but if you don't see the value in it, like, why do we want you here? That's not what they said, but it was so transparent, it was so mind-blowing. I'd never seen anything like this in my life.
Yeah.
And so that's why I was like, when I went to these other brokerages, all they ever said to me was like, especially like Remax and KW, not to knock on them, but all they would say is like, we're the number one brokerage, we're this, we're that, like, I'm like, great. Is it because the top agents came here 20 years ago when the franchise model was just being born, and then they just haven't left because agents don't like change? Like,
Yeah.
tell me about that situation. So it just, we've had agents leave and go to, say KW, Remax, whatever. And then they hit us up 2 months later and they're like, I made the worst decision. Like, this is horrible. Like, what do I do? It's like, well, you know what to do.
Yeah.
Um, so I know it kind of got off tangent, but like I always say is like, there's always a value exchange in every model. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's with, Realty One, Remax, Keller Williams, Sotheby's, Compass, all the things. And there's always the next person. You see these other companies starting to pop up that are in growth, that are, EXP knockoffs, I call them. And it's just because, people saw an opportunity to get in early over there. They're trying to shift all their business over into that model. You know, the business that you build is going to be successful wherever you build it. And then from there, you're looking for like what aligns best with like my objective.
Yep.
I love the revenue share model because if you have influence or you're into recruiting or agent attraction or growing agents, things like that, it can be very lucrative.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but if you're just like, I'm looking to sell real estate, all these things, I think a lot of agents and a lot of companies make their systems look 10 times better than what they are,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, and it's
So,
usually leads first. That's usually what you hear. And I remember like just getting hit up all the time from agents of like who's got the most leads and leads. And I saw a post on like the Mastermind the other day about that. Like my brokerage said they promised leads and I didn't get any when I got here. And it's like crap, man. If that is what you are literally hoping to grow your real estate business or any business on is like free lead gen from somebody else, I think you just kind of doomed from the start because you're not out there generating your own
well,
business or getting around the people who are doing what you want to do.
that's exactly what it is, dude. Is like everyone thinks their brokerage owes them all of these things. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. Uh,
Owes them. Yep.
if you pay the brokerage, I got rid of having expectations out of the brokerage a long time ago. I'm like, I need them to give me the platform to accelerate my business. And different brokerages will give you different tools. And some brokerages, and it's proven, it's factual proven that they're designed to let you produce between 5 and 20 deals a year. So some agents don't want to grow beyond that. So if that's the model you want to be in and hang people you want to hang around, then those models exist.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just very mind baffling to me when I talk to agents and they're like, I want to build this brokerage and I want to do all these things. And, I look at where they're at and I'm like, dude, there is a fast forward button. There
Mm-hmm.
really is.
Yeah.
And I had an agent the other day. He's like, I'm gonna build my own brokerage and da 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 da. And I was like looking at him. I'm like, dude, like, why do you want to do that? And they think it's gonna give them all this power and make them all this money. So then I just said, then I like see this interview where this guy's like, worth 100 million, and he's like, yeah, I own 5 brokerages, and it was the worst thing I ever did. And once I got rid of my brokerages, it's a trap. And that's why like the EXP models and all these companies, and this is like going back to Gary Keller's like profit sharing model. is somebody was like, profit share over revenue share. It's like, well, tell me why you like that model. Well, it's because when you're profitable, everyone wins. Well, why can't you have both? Because the last time I checked, EXP is like the most profitable real estate brokerage out there in the world, and we're giving 50% of our revenue back to the agents. So why is your model better? Well, we have offices, this and that, this and that. It's like, okay, now you start going down that whole path, right?
Yeah.
So then you go back into like, okay, well, what do you need as an agent, and like what is the best opportunity for you?
It's
You know?
funny that the brick and mortar always gets to, you bring up an interesting topic, like, and it just hit me. That is probably one of the biggest things. Well, it's cloud. I love going into the office. I've never, like, we've been around ballers, $1 billion a year producers, like, and it just hit me. I'm like, the one thing they've never bitched about was like that they needed an office space in the building. And when I was a title rep and I had to go get all the top tens, all the biggest agents, they were never in there. I had to literally go
Yeah.
find them in the city in their own private office. So like I think the who wants the brick and mortar and I miss the office, it's a lot of agents who aren't producing as much. And then it feels like you're doing something, you know?
Oh yeah. Well, also real estate brokerages, like the big teams and stuff, they're like lost leaders to the brokerage, and they're just there to like use them as like leverage essentially.
Yeah.
But also like, because we have the at EXP, we get the Regis access. So in my mind, if I was a new agent, or even if I was a seasoned agent, it's like, and people are like, well, Regis, it's kind of boring, or it's just different, right? Well, what I think is like, if I was an agent and I was real hungry to go out and get business, would I rather be walking into an office that's full of agents that are all sitting there doing nothing? Because when I went to the office, that's all it was. Or
Right,
do I want
right.
to be going to a co-working space that has all these business owners in one room where I can network and collaborate and talk to these other business owners that probably know people out there looking to buy and sell real estate?
Mm-hmm.
You'd have to be a fool to think the other way. And like, oh, dude, I could just go on for
I
days
know.
about this whole thing, especially like, well, they're like, well, it's because people can't conceptualize the idea, and until you actually see it, you'll never know what it's all about.
Right. And
And
this is
that's the
not,
and that
we got off on a tangent about it, but it's not for us to like look at us and what we do. And that's the wrong way to do it. We come, like, everything that we always talk about is actually coming from our experience. So we want you guys to know that we're not just like picking. And Jesse, let me tell you one thing about him that you won't hear is one, EXP was the last on our list. He
oh yeah.
interviewed. I mean, you guys hear him on this podcast, how intense he is. That's how he was on with every brokerage. We weren't going to EXP. He figured it out. Two, guess what? Every new brokerage that comes about, he does the same interview because he tells me every day, Jackson, if there's a better situation that we can get into, we're going tomorrow. He hasn't found that yet, but I just wanted to preface a lot of this that we're not just homers.
Oh yeah.
There's been a lot of interviews, data, research into exactly where we're at.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is like, I will never miss an opportunity ever again in my life
Right.
like I missed over here. And I don't say I missed it because we still got in, in 2020. But the reality is we listened to outside influences of why it was the worst idea.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
then, and this is what I always say, is like, no one has the best interest in your business except for yourself. And this is why you have to go out and investigate things, because we literally sat in, this going back to the brick and mortar, every Tuesday at that office, they just hammered on EXP,
Yep.
because it was in Inman every single day. And I remember they're like, oh yeah, Brad Inman has a love affair with, uh, Glenn Sanford at EXP. Like, I remember that was always like and then I remember in our office, they're always like, oh, EXP, they can't be sustainable in this model. They can't be sustainable. Like, they're going to go bankrupt. They're going to go bankrupt.
And
Like,
we cheered that and we rawhawed that.
oh
Like, we
yeah.
were on that board, right? Don't let your, that's the thing about it now that, like, looking back, you're like, man, if you just take those interviews from the right people, like, you don't you owe it to yourself to like always stay curious, you know?
Oh
Take
yeah,
those interviews.
exactly. So now, like, with like all the models popping up, LPT, Real, Epic. I mean, the list goes on. There's hundreds of them, dude. I literally got a message last week from another one that just popped up, and this guy actually messaged me. He actually called me like he knew me, dude. And this guy was like, "All right, this guy." He's like, "Oh, like I've been like," he acted like he knew me, like we'd been best friends, and I was just like laughing. And then in my own mind, I knew exactly where he was going. And he was actually at EXP, and he's like, "Oh, I've been looking at this other company, and I'm just trying to get a couple other people to look at it and let me know if I'm making it." He was using the old method.
Yeah.
And then when the EXP announced their revenue share model, he texted me and said, I'm really upset about this, even though I'm like, oh, this is a way better situation. He's like,
Yep.
I'm really upset about this. This is the perfect time to leave. Are you with me or not? And I just responded,
Let's
NOT.
go. I'll charge ahead.
I'm like, NOT, brother.
Man, I know you taking a lot of interviews. I guess, and we'll open up our door. If you guys literally want to have an interview with Jesse and learn about it, and if you want to argue about how much better your brokerage is and fight him, if you want to bring us to your brokerage, email us and we'll listen to you. But
Oh yeah.
if you want to grow and we're not going to promise you leads, we'll promise you that we get into your business and we'll help you grow it like the real way. Shoot us that email. We've been getting a lot of interviews and reach outs from you guys. So we want to thank you first and foremost for listening to the podcast, but the reach outs um about, some of the people actually emailing us about joining the brokerage are not. They learn everything. They're like, thank you. At least I know it now. I'm not interested now, but they know now, right? At least they know. So
Well, that's what I say is if you're going to say no, at least know what you're saying no to. And
yep,
it's always best to be educated because let's just say you're like, okay, I was in Portland last week, right? And then I was like by my old building and um, I saw this agent and she's like, oh, I missed the boat back in 2020 when, she's like, but now I'm looking at this brokerage.
yep,
And in my mind, I'm like, uh, I would compare everything side by side because what you have happening right now is people shifting into these different avenues, whether it's real, epic, LPT, and they think it's the best option because it's the only one they've ever looked at. And they're like,
yep.
nothing else could be better out there. And this is the same thing I saw in corporate America. Everyone was always like, nothing could be better out there. And I remember when I worked at Boston Beer, we called them Sambots. And I remember just thinking, and then there was a bunch of people that had been in the brewing industry, and we were like, we've been to one company to another. And then we're in our minds, we're like, dude, actually, there's a lot better options out there. This is the first one you started at, so you think it's the best option.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, it's always what's best for you. That's my premise is what's best for you. And then there's always the value exchange. And I know I keep saying this, but the reality is like, let's just say you're like, oh, I'm all about branding and marketing and I just want to be like known as this luxury person. Well, paying $100,000 a year to Compass might be the best thing for you.
Mm-hmm.
But you're like, oh, I only care about paying a split and I'm only going to sell two houses a year. Well, maybe the flat fee route is the best thing for you.
Yep.
You know,
Yep. You've told people that you actually.
somebody is like, well, like I always tell everyone is like after doing 150 deals a year or whatever, and paying EXP all in, all fees, everything, it's like 30K. And I just said that we've generated 1.2 million in revenue share. It's like they literally pay us to be there, like in 4 years. So
It's a good fit for us, not for everybody. But if you got questions, hit us up. Jesse at realagentnow.com, Jackson at realagentnow.com, info at jacksonwilkie.com. And we'd love to hear your questions too. So send us any questions you have for the podcast.
yep. It's
And
funny,
we
dude.
would,
I get the DMs on Instagram. I'm like, they're like, oh, I love your podcast. Oh, I'm so glad you guys are doing it again. I'm like, cool. Send us a question.
yeah, for real, DM it, whatever. Hit us anything. So, all right, homies. Until the next one, we will catch you later.
Catch you later.